I want to talk about money and manifesting and how much we measure our success with how much money is being made. And especially spiritual people. Really, that's how we're measuring success. So this is my personal experience, which is I have yet to meet a spiritual person who makes good money. Zahara! Zahara, come on. Come this way. Come on. I have yet to meet a spiritual person who makes good money. There's two cases that doesn't already come from money. Number one. Or they have family connections. For example, I heard someone once say, I never needed to make a website. Oh no, don't eat that yet. I never needed to make a website. I just had business. Well, their family's been in the same little town for generations, and the business that they have is normal accounting. This is someone who's considers themselves very spiritual. And there was a comment about that person's success, but they didn't say, I never needed a website because my family is so entrenched in this community, word of mouth, I got business that way. Nope, it was said like, I am more spiritual than you. Another woman, chiropractor, made it very clear, and she's spiritual too. Does energy work or something, talks to extraterrestrials. Ton of money. A few years later, and made a point of that. A few years later, I looked her up and found out she belonged to sort of a cultish chiropractic organization that her dad was the leader of, and she left that part out. Like she had started from scratch and her family was on welfare, or they were refugees or poor white folks in America, was the impression given, not my dad runs this huge giant organization that I just stepped into, just like the other lady. This same person, by the way, once told me that she manifested $15,000 to get her driveway redone. How did she manifest it? Her mother gave her the money. Oh, and she's already like 45, 50 years old. This is the chiropractor who at one point made a lot of money, but for some reason wasn't anymore. Maybe her father's organization had fallen down. I don't know. But I wouldn't have described mommy giving me money as manifesting. I would have said, I'm incredibly lucky. I come from a family that has money, and my mommy bought me, a driveway. What was wrong with that? I'd be so happy to have my mom or dad buy me something like that. So, why am I bringing this up? I could go on, by the way, with endless stories of pretty much, again, this is just me, everybody who has been somebody who worked with Yogi Bhajan, another person who's a massage therapist and an artist. All these people who, quote, follow their bliss and somehow make money or support themselves doing it as an artist, as a massage therapist. And at least for me, I was running around going, wow, I must not be very good because, I'm not making money like that. Thank goodness my teacher, my Chinese teacher, also does not make money. He makes enough money, but not like that. So the other pattern I've seen is these folks who are artists and massage therapists or Yogi Bhajan end up retired. And the Yogi Bhajan lady moved to Greece with a, quote, small inheritance, which she never mentioned in all the years that I knew her, very kind of deeply knew her, actually, that she came from a family with money. So her small retirement allowed her to ship her antiques that she had gathered to Greece, buy property in Greece, and go on some cruise, like an Eckhart Tolle cruise, that costs like $15,000 because you get to listen to Eckhart Tolle as well as go on a cruise. And it took me a very long time to understand that the people who sold manifesting and sold go with the flow and sold, if you just do what I do, or I'm so spiritual and the proof is everything works out, they all came from money. And they all have retirement. They were all connected somehow. So they weren't like starting from scratch, knowing nothing, no one. I get these boots off and having to go from word of mouth. So I'm saying this because I would like to encourage everybody that when you hear all this advertisement of, I was a chiropractor and made all this money, I'm an energy healer and made all this money, I'm trying to think of one person I know who actually made money that wasn't supported by their spouse, their trust fund. I can't tell you how many trust fund babies I've met in this lifetime. It's wild, like 20. Incredible. So they're supported by a spouse, trust fund, retirement, or disability. One person I know is so proud, channels and does all this other stuff. And someone taught her how to kind of dupe the Navy into getting lifetime disability, which started at 20 years old, and then married an engineer who also made money. And this is interpreted as, I guess, Spirit found a way for her to be a light worker by making sure she never had to have a job from the time she was like 22 on. And our tax dollars are paying, and she's not disabled at all. I don't know. I have a problem with this. But that aside, the biggest problem I have is how these stories kind of shame people into, if I was doing it right, I would be making money. And I'm going, no, it's not doing it right. If you're connected, if you have enough money to support you for the first 10 years of starting your business, if you have an income that you don't have to worry about, then it's a completely different story. And the other part of this rant here is that it took me years to find out these truths. No one told me. I found them out by accident. Someone let it slip. Someone told a story. I finally started reading between the lines. Some people, it didn't make sense. Like, how did this happen? I looked them up, and their father is the head of this giant healing system, chiropractic thing, and this is what this person went into, because the story I was told is we're a poor pioneer family. This is the $15,000 gift for the driveway. We're a poor, pioneer family that came to America, left out the part about what you do about American Indians and did your family own slaves. Never heard that part. And somehow this farming family, how do you become a chiropractor from there? Like, I never heard that story of, my family's all this way, but I became a chiropractor. Well, the dad became a chiropractor, started a giant organization. In other words, when people are selling you something spiritual with the promise that you're going to make a living, and that is the proof that their system works, and meaning also that until you're making that money, you should keep working with their system, because they're the living proof that if you do what they do, you'll get money. But no, that's not true. They've got the money already, and they have enough free time to do spiritual work as a hobby. And I have seen this pattern since my 20s. The first real big picture of it was when I was with my spiritual parents. There was this wonderful woman, I adored her, named Sarah. And I would hang out with her at her pool house, and she also knew my spiritual parents. She had to be at least 20, 30 years older than me. And the story was, herbalist and spirituality and all this. And I thought, she's called to do it, and gift or whatever. And eventually, over the years, I found out she was from an extremely wealthy trust fund. And great, that's awesome. But why not say, I'm so lucky, I'm so blessed to have come from money that I can do this really cool stuff because I don't have to make a living. And she did do wonderful things for people, and that was great. But the mystery of how do you make a living doing the stuff you love to do is that mystery story is perpetuated when we don't really know other people's stories. Because for people who really do break from family traditions and do a kind of work that maybe nobody else did, it's hard and it's lonely. And for people who have money and connections, what the story they tell is flow. They're in this flow, and it just came and it just worked out. And they don't say, yes, I had to shovel horse manure for a couple of years, which I had to do at one point, fold laundry in a hospital, which I've done also. And I know for myself, maybe y'all don't do this, but for myself, I used this kind of patterning against myself. Meaning, if I was really meant to do spiritual work, the money would flow, the circumstances would flow, and it would just come to me because that was the story. And I bought it forever. And it took me a really long time also to start being skeptical enough that when people tell me their story, spiritual people, this is, I now nod and say yes, and then I wait to find out the other details about their success, their flow, etc. So what I'm saying is, if it's kicking your ass, that's not a sign you're doing it wrong. And if it's up and down, that's not a sign that you're doing it wrong. And I guess finally, there's nothing wrong with being a secret agent, as I call it. That's actually my favorite thing, which is I make a living another way. And I do all the spiritual stuff through that job. And why I like that is because some people will go see the woo-woos, the new ages, let me draw your soul portrait person. But a lot of people won't, especially nowadays, because it's gotten so ridiculous, the new age. So when you're a secret agent, people get exposed who would never even know to look for someone like you. And this is a field that needs massive amount of trimming. So I still prefer being the secret agent. And I'm also talking about this for the people who lose their self-esteem engine when they hear these stories and believe them. And the people aren't lying. They're just leaving out the details. I don't know why people in the spiritual world, the New Age world, are so embarrassed to say that they're rich or they have money or they're a trust fund. I don't understand that. And finally, what I want to say about this is wealth is in your chart. You picked it out before you ever got here. The big question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to run around like a guru? By the way, all these wealthy people who are spiritual, I never saw them in a soup kitchen or a food line or handing out clothes, somewhere in the ghetto. Never. They were always working among people and so-called helping people of prestige or privilege. Again, these are my observations. I'm not saying this is the truth. Maybe this is just my world experience. So look into people's stories. Don't beat yourself up. Get a chart done. Get an Akashic reading. Get numerologies, astrology, whatever works for you. I always do life charts on people the first time I meet them. I had a friend, and we had an argument about this, about money. Because at one point she was making a shit ton of money, and she really was the real thing. Came from a horrible background, became a massage therapist, and was just amazing at it because of the energy work she did also. So we used to kind of argue about manifesting and intending, which I always said was nonsense. And she's like, no, certain things you do, you get these results, etc. Well, finally, something happened. She had a client that was like a millionaire, and she had him for years. And he told her that everything he touched turned to gold. He said, it's crazy. It's like, everything I do works. And then 1 year, it stopped. And he couldn't make a freaking dime. And he lost money, and he lost his mojo. She's telling me the story. And I said to her, I guarantee you it's in his life chart. The wealth was there for a while, and then it's over. That's over. And she started to change her mind then about intending and manifesting, because the man was doing everything right still, and he couldn't make a dime. And this is how I learned to love readings, by the way, because mainstream psychology gives us great tools, but my life went from gold into what I call the reverse Midas touch, which is everything I touch turned to poop. And if I didn't know how to do a reading for myself, I would have thought there was something wrong with me, like really wrong with me and screwed up. But I learned I was in the middle of a 9-year really rough karmic cycle. Karmic meaning a lot of soul evolution work rather than earth plane abundance or anything. And if I had known that, I don't know, I might have jumped off a cliff, seriously. So I had 5 more years to go in that cycle. And when I realized I was in this cycle, I just hunkered down. I stopped trying to expand. I stopped trying to get anywhere. Instead, I made my life really small and studied. And it worked out great. I learned alternative medicine. I hunkered down into spirituality. I had shit jobs. I was like Xeroxing in an office and working in the entertainment industry for a while as like a secretary to some of the most disgusting producers, not great ones. And then it lifted. And my life started to be more normal in human terms, on materialistic terms. What a lifesaver. So somebody might say, well, if we already planned our life, what's the point of living? Well, because it's like planning a trip to Disneyland. You're going to Disneyland, and the question is, are you going to puke on the rides? Are you going to have fun? Will you get mad standing in line? Will you make new friends? The journey here is how we do this life. The what we already picked before we got here, when we were in a higher intelligence, when we were in a higher state, when we were with guides and mentors in that quantum field. So I think that's a great outlook. And then there's, at least for me, I have to duck to get under this fence here. At least for me, there's so little self-blame. Like, why am I not making money? Why am I not succeeding? Well, because in this stage, I'm supposed to be healing, or that's what it says on my chart. In this stage, it's more social and community. In this stage, isolation and being alone and having to learn about that. So I hope this helps, and I hope you're really, really careful about buying into all the bullshit that's out there, particularly in the New Age community. And by the way, I think the Christian megachurches and stuff do the same thing. When I hear those speeches, I don't hear them talking about inner peace. They're talking about give this church money and do what I do. I'm hauling this heavy bucket of poop. Do what I do, and you too will get money, and that'll bring you closer to Jesus, which of course has nothing to do with Christianity whatsoever. And yet, people do it. I have a friend, and she just tithes to her church, 10%, because apparently that's what the Bible tells you to do. And she swears that it helped her income. And she's still struggling, by the way, with income. Works her ass off, but somehow that tithing has stuck in her brain. But that's superstition. That's not spirituality. So, people say, do it this way, envision this, do, affirmations. It's superstition. Now, there is some neurobiology around affirmations. I don't mind talking about that. And yes, when we're in a shitty mood, it does affect our income and our friendships because we're depressed and we don't see the signs of opportunity or we perform badly. But all of that comes down to the how, not the what. So I am not against activities that help change your brain waves so that you are in the best possible state to receive what you already decided life was going to give you. That's a lot different than do this and now you will make money. That is superstition. Because if it was true, this kind of superstition stuff has been out since the beginning of mankind getting greedy. Tony Robbins and every other process out there that's like, this is the way. There should be millions of people who make money. And think about this. What this is also saying is that all the poor people are poor because they have the wrong thought or they're not manifesting. It has nothing to do with being black or a person of color or being a woman and getting paid less. No, it must mean because, if you just had the right thoughts or did my process, you would make money. I'm trying to trim a bush here, not working. So if you did all of that, then you would have money. So that means everybody in the ghetto is doing things wrong. It has nothing to do with socioeconomic prejudices and obstacles. And we all know that's bullshit. There's so much technology, as the spiritual people like to call it, out there about how to manifest. Then there should be more rich people. And here's the other thing. If it really worked, I'm teaching you how to manifest money, you wouldn't need to do over and over workshops with me, which means I would be putting myself out of business because I teach you how to get rich, you get rich, and you don't need me anymore. But instead, it always fails, and it's always your fault, and you have to go back and do another workshop. And if that's not said outright, it's implied sweetly, like the chiropractor lady or the massage therapist / artist person. It's like, well, I just do this and I just do that, and it seems to work. Well, it's working because it was meant to work. It's in your chart. That was meant to be their experience. And what are they doing with it? Okay, they're doing art. But they could also be, for example, doing art and putting it in old folks' homes. So it's rotating art in a housing for seniors so they get to see art. They could be doing some kind of volunteer work, and I never see that. I'm sure there's people out there like that, so don't take this as the truth with a big T. These are, again, my personal observations and something I had to work through, which is I had to stop believing the stories about prosperity and using that against myself as a measure. And no matter how hard I tried and would get that sort of straight in my brain, I'd meet someone else with a really good story and I spin out for a second, and then I have to pull back and remind myself about what I'd learned, that so far I have met, I think literally one person who did not come from money and does spiritual work and makes a living at it, and that's my Chinese teacher who is like 85 now. That's it. He's the only one so far. I'm sure there's others out there. Maybe it's my path to run into all these trust fund babies and other people who are not honest about their economics. And the only reason to be honest is to take the mystery out of their success so that other folks understand when you have money and become a healer, that's one experience. When you are called to be a healer and you don't have money and you have to make money that way, it's a whole other ball game. I hope this helps. Real talk. I wish I had someone to talk to me about this years ago. It was a painful experience for me to trot after somebody for a couple of years and then watch them wave goodbye to me as they got on a cruise ship, having never told me they came from money. And there I am, following them along, doing what they do at their, their encouragement. And they were already set up, and everything they were trying to teach me to do or get me to do was nonsense. So that's it for now. Be real. Be skeptical. Do research. Read between the lines. Have doubt until proven differently. It'll keep you much saner than the up and down ride of believing. And I did a lot of that believing because I wanted to be open-minded and non-judgmental, etc., etc. And I finally had to just get real instead of working so hard to be nice. All right, more later. Chores. Come on, pup. Yeah, there she is. Good dogs. Oh, good dogs. I know we have to go for a walk. Yeah, good little puppies. Oh, teeny tiny dogs. All right, guys. Later.